it would be one of the highlights in my life, because I've always loved to hitch my wagon to a star. And I think nothing should pull one down, but if you can be elevated, it's good. And Pikedale has always stood in my mind as one of the most beautiful experiences in my life.
Pikedale had a strange effect on my life. I must admit the years there were the happiest days I've ever experienced. But I suppose nothing was ever able to live up to the Pikedale days. I was so involved with the place, the river, the trees, the stones, the house. It was just all so much part of me that to leave it was very empty. And I don't think I'll ever be able to find a lifestyle that was as wonderful.
Good evening. A chance find on a rubbish tip and a year's detective work unlocked the family record revealed in tonight's fascinating Eye on the World. Old footage of a wealthy Queens and country dynasty shows us the simplicity and the elegance of an age gone by. The film that was so very nearly lost forever includes one of the first short films made in this country. It's now safely preserved in the National Film Archives. Wait, I'll get the camera. A remarkable look at a remarkable era.
Late in 1981, Gold Coast cinematographer Jerry Williams was browsing through another junk shop, looking for old cameras to add to his collection on photographic history. His attention was attracted by a box of old 16mm film that had been salvaged from a local tip, still in the original packets dating back to 1926, and amazingly, still in perfect condition. Curious, he took them home, and as the rolls unwound before him, Jerry's curiosity changed to excitement. The people and the places in the home movies reached out to him across the years, and he had to know more about them and to tell their story. Two names on the packets were his only link with that past: Rogerson and Pikedale. And they began Jerry on a 12-month quest through phone books and records, a quest that ended when a woman rang from Sydney after hearing a radio report about his search. Now in her 80s, Mrs. Margaret Pope was one of the young women in the films. Her name had been Rogerson, and she had lived at Pikedale. When Fanny married Arthur Rogerson, she knew of her husband's commitment to the land. He was born to it and was determined that with hard work he would meet its demands and claim his rewards. Fanny possessed an inner strength equal to her husband's. She bore him 5 children: John, Colin, Margaret, Helen, and Nancy. Together they built their life on the land, first in the sheeplands of New South Wales, then later taking their flocks into the harsh country of Western Queensland, where they knew the heartbreak of drought. Arthur saved their sheep by moving them east, where in 1918, just outside Stanthorpe, the family became the Rogersons of Pikedale. Covering 50,000 acres of prime grazing country, Pikedale was already world famous for the quality of its fleece. Arthur Rogerson and his sons were to build on that reputation. Fanny was to build a home and a way of life that would affect all they touched.
Mum was one of the Rogerson girls, And so obviously because of this, I just belonged here too. They always came back at every possible opportunity. It was a very drawing sort of place, and so from the moment I was born, I was here. That's all there was to it.
Well, it was like this. It was in the spring of 1928. I went to Pikedale at Stanthorpe. I knew Nancy Rogers in Sydney, and she invited me to visit her home and meet the family. Well, you didn't go off in the casual fashion in those days. You waited for the mother to have sent you the written invitation, which arrived very formally, inviting me to come. And in that spring, if I remember, there were apple blossoms, and on the way in beautiful, very beautiful country. I was met, of course, by the eldest son, John, who was tall and fine-looking with big black bushy moustache and big slouch hats and long skinny legs I can see in those polished boots. And off we set. Well, to my amazement, we didn't drive up to the homestead. When we got there, it had been raining, flooding, and we went in a small boat across. And there, in front of this sort of gone-with-the-wind mansion, to my mind, I'd been used to country homesteads, low-lying, with warm, broad, low verandas. 2 stories, and I think an iron balconies, but we're all covered with roses in full bloom. I'm there to meet one with all the family. Rather austere at first, hiding very kind hearts and a wonderful welcome. So that's how I arrived at Pikedale.
In my day, I would say there were 11 or 12 men about the property, some boundary riders. There were 3 or 4 cottages at ends of the place, and a few that lived within the house. Often the jackaroo and the overseer were within the house, and they ran. I think they all regarded it as home. You know, they loved the place. They had nice little cottages, and their children grew up there, and it was a very family affair, the workers on the place. They all had great respect for my uncles. They were always Mr. John and Mr. Colin, and but they, you know, they were in the work too, my uncles. They definitely were part of what was going on. They didn't stand on the veranda and give orders and then send the men off. Whatever was going, they were all involved with, branding or dipping or drenching or whatever.
There was a rigidness, a hard working. You never saw anyone lolling about. You never saw any, the boots were changed, the boots were polished, always the ties, the vests, and always an alertness that appealed to one.
They were always in their tie and waistcoat. That was all there was to it. Maybe very, very hot summer's day, the old waistcoat came off, but I don't think the tie ever did. And I think that was just a family tradition. It was pretty obvious with my 2 uncles. I think my grandfather was really without a coat. On top of the waistcoat, and the old leggings, you know, they didn't go out without being totally dressed.
Education for the Rogerson offspring, boys and girls, meant Sydney boarding schools, where friendships and outlook could be broadened, along with learning the 3 R's. Perhaps in those days, the eldest daughter, Margaret, heard the embryonic whispers of feminism, but on Pikedale there was already a raw equality.
We took part in everything that was going on the place, as well as doing our bit in the house. We were there to lend a hand when necessary. And if you could ride well, you could get a job mustering and that sort of thing. Obviously, sharing time, we took messages, we were ready to go out and put sheep in various paddocks when they were shorn, and help dipping and all that sort of thing, a little bit of everything.
In my day, I was very much involved. Anything I wanted to do, I could do. I was mustering at shearing time, counting the sheep in the sheds. Little girl always was counting the sheep in, standing by the, whoever he was, the shed boss, I suppose, and counting sheep in and out, putting them on the little ledger thing. That was great. But I ploughed and, you know, whatever, mended fences, whatever was going, I was certainly involved in that. And I think the whole place has been like that always. Man and woman, they all joined in with everything. It was part of this togetherness and part of this total feeling of family that they all had.
We were sufficient unto ourselves. We didn't need people to come in from outside at all. We made all our own fun with our tennis and great ping pong tournaments and billiards. It wasn't necessary to have people in from outside.
The thing that I remember most, I think, is this feeling of so many of us all belonging together. The extended family, I suppose you could call it. We all came back, parents, children, you know, nearly dogs and cats more or less when anything was going, Christmas times, special occasions. Everyone that could possibly get here got here. I think my grandmother was rather a matriarchal figure, and everyone was certainly drawn to her. Perhaps a bit scared of her, but very much drawn to her. With our oldies. Children were important, I'm sure, in the household. We did everything together. It wasn't a distinction. It was a very family thing. But the kids were encouraged to do what they wanted to do and enjoy what was here to enjoy. You know, it was a wonderful time.
Standing on a hill, towering over all around it, the Pikedale homestead, an 11-bedroom mansion of brick, timber and stone, imposing, gracious.
To me it was fairyland. It was as though although there was nothing romantic between us, as though I was brought by a fairy prince to a fairy tale mansion or homestead. If I remember, it was white, and I can remember the roses were mostly red and pink, and a great doorway.
I suppose I'd have to call a house enormous. It didn't seem to me to be that way when I was young because we were so used to it. But it was very big, and I think it was probably only used fully when everybody was there. There must have been many bedrooms anyway out of use a lot of the time.
I can remember the oil paintings by Gerald Nathan of all the family around the walls, and the beautiful drapes and the beautiful quietness of it all. And no impropriety, no shouting, no rudeness, no anything. And it was just like a dream world in a dream book.
When we first went there, it was very bare. There were no trees around at all, very little garden. other than just off the front veranda. There was a little garden there. And Mother, who was a born gardener, she had to extend it. Everything Mother put in grew. She really green fingers. It was a little rocky knob there where the house is or was. And every time you wanted to put a tree in, you had to blast holes and fill them up with silt from the river to get anything to grow. And also, John, my brother, used to say to her, Mother, have you got any hoses on? No, dear, I've turned them all off. Those in the balmy days when I was engaged, and he'd say to me, hey, go and have a look how many hoses she's got on. I only came back with 9 tonight. She'd be sneaking water. Otherwise, I'd wake up in the morning, go to have a shower, call out, okay, there's no water. Oh, Mother's been watering again.
I remember she broke her back playing tennis at one stage. I don't remember, I was a wee girl. I remember pictures of me on her lap, and here she is in the wheelchair, hosing the garden. So she never lost her interest. The garden seemed to be quite a focal point in the family life. It wasn't just beautiful for anyone to come and see. We used it. It was part of us. So many things happened there. As children, I remember birthday parties. Maybe that was just so the crumbs were kept outside, but it was beautiful. You know, we loved being there.